Hello and welcome to the 905er podcast. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
A recurring theme that we've encountered since the 905er began a year ago is the question of who runs our cities, who gets to decide what makes sense for a municipality, and when, if ever, should the province get to overrule the democratically expressed desires of a local population. This question has come to the forefront in Hamilton in recent months, with the debate over whether Hamilton should expand its urban boundary to allow development on farmlands, or whether the city should continue to concentrate on intensification and increased density within its current boundaries. In recent days, it's been announced that Hamilton Council will vote on this question on November the 9th, making it a crucial moment for deciding the nature of Hamilton's urban future for the next several decades. Simultaneously, Minister of Municipal Affairs Steve Clark has waded deep into the debate with an op-ed in the Hamilton Spectator, in essence stating that keeping Hamilton's urban boundary unchanged is not an option. To discuss this question, we are joined today by Nancy Hurst of Stop Sprawl HamONT, a grassroots coalition of citizens founded by Nancy, Michelle, Tom and others to fight against the loss of 3,300 acres of farmland and make the case against increased sprawl and car-centric development. The campaign has gathered over 5,000 supporters and peppered the city with anti-sprawl lawn signs. Meanwhile, the city's own citizen survey attracted 18,000 respondents, with a seemingly overwhelming 90% anti-sprawl consensus. Okay, so welcome Nancy Hurst to the 905 podcast. I thought we'd just kick off just by asking you to give us some of the background of Stop Sprawl HamONT and what your story is, and obviously what you're trying to do right now.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Roland. I appreciate being here. Well, it started actually not that long ago. This is a pretty new movement, and I guess I could trace it back to December of last year when I watched Environment Hamilton's Don't Let Sprawl Take It All webinar, which was hosted by Linda Lukasik. At that point, she was trying to raise the alarm bells in Hamilton that the city was about to undertake a massive boundary expansion, and they were asking for outreach. They were outreaching to the citizens and asking for comments on whether we wanted to sprawl max or sprawl supermax. And a lot of the comments in the chat that day were, what happened to the no boundary expansion option? And that wasn't an option. So I wrote to city planning staff shortly after that and asked that night, and asked, why is there no boundary expansion option being put forward? And the answer was that the Ford government has changed the planning laws for the entire province. So the Places to Grow Act was amended to require a market-based lens and an increased timeline of an additional 10 years. So it looked like a big land grab was about to occur. So I got together with a few friends and we decided to do our very best to stop this boundary expansion from happening. And at the very least, inform Hamiltonians about what was happening, because the city had done some initial public outreach and only reached 150 people in the entire city. And we thought we could do a lot better than that. And we have.
What has been the response to your organization from Hamiltonians in general?
Oh, it's literally fantastic. Across all parts of this city, we can say that we have support from all political stripes, the lower part of the city, the upper part of the city, and everybody really can unite against a single rallying cry, which is to save our farmland, don't spend the tax dollars on sprawling subdivisions, invest those tax dollars in our existing city and in the neighborhoods in Hamilton that need the investment, which is frankly all of us.
And I was just saying before we came on, if anybody coming to Hamilton right now and driving around the suburbs and the not so suburbs will see your signs everywhere on the lawns, and it's very noticeable.
I love seeing those signs too. We delivered a lot of them. There are 1,600 signs from the upper to the lower city. And it's even in the rural areas. And a lot of people, Roland and Joel, think that the rural folks are not interested because they might want to sell up. We've had to set up depots on the Hamilton Mountain in the rural areas because we can't keep up with running signs out there. So we've got a few people who are living in farming areas who we've delivered 50 signs. And then when they're gone, they call us up, bring some more. So drive around rural Hamilton, you'll see a lot of them up there too.
Do you have a lot of people? I'm just going to ask, like, look, have you heard a lot of opposition to your group? You know, a lot of people saying, no, we need to keep pushing out. We need to build more subdivisions and develop those spaces, and kind of we need to max out as much space as we have in Hamilton, and then we can worry about building up. Like, do you hear that the opposite argument being brought up a lot, or
a lot? Going? Absolutely not. Citizens have overwhelmingly, through the city survey, which was 18,000 people responded and 16,000 people voted for no expansion. But my own experience is, I'm one of the leaders of this movement, so I've knocked on umpteen doors, talking to people all across the city, really from all across the mountain, in the lower city, and in the rural areas, driving up farmers' driveways, asking, did you hear about the survey? This is when people still didn't know that the survey was out. And we were trying to get people to respond to it. Did you know about the survey? No, I didn't hear about the survey. I never received that in the mail. So I've spoken to hundreds. I'll say over 100 people for sure, myself. And I've run into two who wanted to expand, and they both owned land next to the boundary. Or one was a developer. And fair enough, they want to expand because that's a business opportunity for them. But I'd say that the vast, vast majority of people that I've spoken to and who responded to the city survey are in favor of no expansion. And when certain, individuals try to frame it as it's becoming a divisive issue, well, it's divisive against the people of the city and those who stand to profit from expansion.
It sounds very familiar from my experience in Burlington previously, where a different development issue, but a development issue. I was canvassing in a municipal campaign, and it was like there was no divide. It was as close to unanimous as you ever get in any kind of political debate. Just coming back to what's actually being proposed here. You said it's a massive boundary expansion. I mean, so how much land is being involved here? And I guess the second part of that question would be, what would be built on that land, and why is that the wrong kind of building that we should be doing right now?
Yes, well, what's at stake right now is 3,300 acres of, and I'll put it in quotations, prime agricultural 1, 2, 3 soil farmland. And it is because we have mapping specialists on our team who know how to read the ministry maps, and I have shared them widely through social media, as we all have. It is literally prime 1, 2, and 3, and there are 7 types of soil classifications. Prime 1, 2, and 3 are considered prime because they are the ones that are best able to withstand drought and flooding, which is what's coming with climate change. So most important is to save this land. Now, the Hamilton Mountain, really, we can divide it almost in half. Half of it has already been redesignated back in 2015 as airport land, and it's all earmarked for warehouses. So we missed that opportunity to save that land. The other half, which is basically from South Coast Road east all the way to Golf Club Road over in Elfrida, that's 3,300 acres of functioning, productive, currently being used as farmland, but a lot of it is owned by speculators who bought the land 10, 15 years ago. And they're leasing it back to farmers and waiting for the moment when the boundary expands, when there will be a big uptick in the value of that land. So it's 3,300 acres. Some groups in the city would like you to think that that's 1% of Hamilton's rural land. But if they're talking about the Hamilton that includes the census division, then, well, that stretches pretty much to Brantford. That's not what we're calling Hamilton. Hamilton is the built up area. There's only a limited amount of white belt lands surrounding Hamilton. That's the sandwiched lands between the urban boundary and the green belt. And those lands are 3,300 acres, and they want 84% of it to build housing developments. And didn't we just approve an LRT? Are we not going to need to move people on roads and corridors so that people can have decent homes close to transit? We know that building homes on farmland will only result in more sprawling, car-dependent subdivisions that most people can't afford.
Yeah, and I think, there's a really important point here to be made. Well, two points I'd like to make, because I hardly ever manage to keep it to one. One is, I've been listening to the arguments being made by the province and by developers in Hamilton's neighbouring city, Burlington, for the last 10 years at least, 10, 15 years. And they are the exact opposite of the arguments being made now in Hamilton, which is, well, we can't build out, we've got to protect our farmland, therefore we've got to go up. And, which is all fine. And those are all perfectly good arguments. And then you come to Hamilton, and all of a sudden you've got Steve Clark in the Spectator saying, well, we've got to protect our sensitive neighborhoods, which you don't give a damn about neighborhoods in Burlington. So it's a hilarious. It would be hilarious if it wasn't so tragic kind of situation. And really that actually explain to people what when we talk about white belt, what that means in the context of kind of urban development.
Yes, certainly. Well, the white belt lands are sandwiched in between the built-up area of Hamilton. You can see the houses and the buildings are. And Hamilton also has a considerable amount of green belt surrounding it. But this white belt land is in between the green belt area and the city built-up area. So it's farmland, which is currently not designated as anything but white belt. It's farmland that's functioning and productive. And a lot of it has been built, as I mentioned before, bought up in advance in anticipation of an urban boundary expansion.
A point that you made, Nancy, about that the LRT is finally going to be built at some point in the future in downtown Hamilton. We saw that the ruckus that happened on City Council surrounding that decision, and I'm wondering, maybe let's take a bit of a dive into the local municipal politics, and then we'll also, I think, touch upon the provincial politics as well. What's your take on City Council's movement on this? Like you're getting, it sounds like you're getting a lot of opposition, or sorry, a lot of support for the not expanding into this white belt space, and to kind of keep the boundary where it is. And why is this even a debate then? Like, if the people of Hamilton are very much like, no, let's keep it where it is and figure out how to develop what we got. Why is this a debate?
Yeah. Well, this is a slow moving train that's been on the tracks for a number of years now. This isn't just something that they thought up, a few months ago. This has been on the books since the Elfrida growth area was identified. Elfrida is out by Mud Street. So it's been on the books as a possible expansion area for a number of years. And in some senses, it was just expected that this would happen. But then a few things happened, which is COVID, where we realized that, it's possible to work from home. And maybe food security is an issue since toilet paper security became a big issue. And secondly, the climate change emergency. We've realized that paving over farmland again and again and over is maybe not the best way forward. So I think there are a number, and we're so grateful to them, of city councillors who understand that Hamilton has declared a climate emergency and we need to act on that, and that sprawl will cost taxpayers. It's us that's paying for this. There is a bit of an initial investment by developers in some of the early development costs, but those subdivisions will last for decades and decades, and it's us as taxpayers who are on the hook for paying for that, which is why Hamilton has a $3.9 billion deficit in infrastructure repair spending. Why should we build more infrastructure when we can't even afford to repair what we've got? So we do have councillors, back to your question, who are in favor of this, and maybe the other councillors are thinking a little bit retroactively and maybe need to look more forward thinking, and maybe there's more support, financial support from the development industry with some of the councillors as well.
Okay. On that note, do you know of any councillors that are being backed by the development industry? Do you know anyone by name?
Well, yes, but it's very easy to find out. If you just go to the City of Hamilton's website, there are the tax reporting documents, and everybody has to declare just who is contributing to their development campaign. I can name a few, certainly Lloyd Ferguson, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Maria Pearson. Those are the top two, really. Those two are definitely for urban expansion.
There's a certain issue that I'm surprised. I think you guys have talked about it in your pieces, and this is kind of something about going into the provincial side of the politics equation with Steve Clark's editorial or op-ed, basically saying, we have to protect Hamilton's existing neighborhood flair. And one of the great things about Hamilton is that the downtown has very unique architecture. Like Hamilton traditionally has done a pretty decent job of kind of protecting its architectural heritage. However, those buildings are in need of some massive repair and some infrastructure upgrades. And let's face it, there are a lot of parking lots. There are just a lot of parking lots, and there are a lot of wide open spaces in the downtown core that I mean, you could find a parking lot, on the other side of town to book it to First Ontario Place for a concert. I know, I've done it. And my question is, why won't we make that a priority? I mean, like we said, we have the LRT coming down, being built. We have prime opportunities to build some really, I think Hamilton's in a prime location to kind of revamp its entire downtown core to make it something. I'm not sure what, but I mean, there's just a lot of empty space there that can be remade into something. A little imagination and a little gumption. You can decide, do you want to be an artsy marketplaces, more livable space, whatever. You literally have a blank canvas to do something with. Why isn't that the argument being energized by city council? Like, to me, I'd be like, no, let's work on this, because it sounds almost like this. If we keep pushing out the boundary, and even if we get it right up to the greenbelt, it's almost like you're cratering out the downtown. Like nobody's investing back into the downtown.
Exactly.
And everybody complains, oh, nobody comes downtown anymore. Well, there's nothing there. It's just parking lots.
Well, that's so interesting, because of Hamilton's 15 wards that responded to the city survey, the top survey respondents included wards 2 and 3, which are both lower city wards. And they are clearly saying, yes, in my backyard, YIMBY. They're not living next to farmland, and they want our tax dollars going to, decent, safe, affordable, middle density housing in their wards, which are downtown wards in the core of the city. And this is what we found by talking to people all over the city. And that's why it unites people from all across the city. Stopping sprawl is a win-win, because it not only saves our precious farmland, but it will get those tax dollars invested in building and completing the communities that already exist downtown, in the core of the city, in the lower city. Because in the 60s, what we found was tens of thousands of people left the lower city and they moved to the mountain. So our size doubled, but our population remained the same. So our infrastructure costs doubled. Now we have a whole bunch of broken infrastructure, as you're saying. Large parts of the core are boarded up, vacant, and empty. And it's very telling, I think, that residents of Ward 3 frankly, 1,116 people out of 1,178, which is 95% of Ward 3, want to stop the urban boundary expansion because they want investment in their own neighborhood. They want safe, affordable housing, decent transit, amenities close by, and they want the exact opposite of what you've just described, which is the hollowing out of the core of the city. So to my mind, this is a no-brainer. We save tax dollars, we save the farmland, let's build within our city. So,
and again, it's exactly the argument that the province under different parties, regardless of who's been at the head of it, has been making since the Places to Grow Act. And it's exactly, I think the city council, for all their faults, has been really trying to redevelop downtown and bring investment and all those things. So it's crazy when the change is starting to happen, but there are still so many parking lots downtown that it's crazy. I can't remember which councillor it was complaining the other day about closing streets on the weekend, saying, why would anybody come? And it's like, well, HamONT is one of the easiest places to get parked in the province because there's so many parking lots. But that's a bad thing. You don't want land with cars sitting on it. And then this point that the sprawl is cheap for developers and expensive for cities, because you've got to have far more sewers put in place for single-family homes than you do for a high-rise. Is so important for people to grasp.
Sewers, roads, all that infrastructure. It's terribly expensive, and we can't afford to pay for what we've got. So let's not build any more. Let's use that investment to fix what we have in our existing city. And prior governments, Ontario governments, had much more of a densification mandate. So that could be what you're referring to in Burlington. But since 2020, things have changed, and the densification numbers have been reduced, and the timeline has been increased. So that's why now we're all running to a much lower densification target. And the other thing that the Ford government did is they've got this market-based lens, which means the market has demanded single-family homes. So we have to build single-family homes. But the truth is, since the 50s and the suburban experiment, all we've been building is single-family homes. So of course the market says people want that because that's all they've been able to buy. If we had a mix of middle density, missing middle housing in our city and across all of our neighborhoods, we would have places for the tens of thousands of the baby boomer generation who are about to downsize. Where are they going to go? They don't have any missing middle density housing to move to. All they can move into is a $8,000 a month Amica out of town, or another smaller single family home. So a mix of housing within neighborhoods would be a very good idea.
Let's keep on that note then. Minister of Municipal Affairs Steve Clark wrote in Hamilton an infamous op-ed in the Spectator last week. Long story short, basically promoting the so-called virtues of expanding the boundary. Saying that we need it for housing, to house people and whatnot. The same old arguments. I have two questions. One, what did you take? What was your opinion on that opinion piece? And then I'll have a follow up to that after I hear your answer.
Well, the opinion piece was not a surprise because this all originates from the Ford government's changes to the Places to Grow Act. There seems to be an unrelenting sprawl agenda from highways to every single municipality in the Greater Golden Horseshoe is now having to bring their official plan into conformity with the provincial market-based methodology. So Hamilton is, in fact, leading the charge in this because we've managed to mobilize so many people and we've got a great campaign going here, and it was unexpected. So really the letter from the minister is, it shows that they're getting scared, because if the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has to write an op-ed in a little municipality's local newspaper, then things are getting hot in the kitchen. So we're glad that he showed his hand, honestly. And this is something we can unite against, is because the Ford government, it doesn't have the right to bully us around.
Has anyone from the Ford government, the Minister Clark or the Premier's office themselves, reached out to your organization at the grassroots level to say, here's our reasoning why, we want you to be on board. Let's do this together. Let's find a compromise. Has there been any outreach to you or to at least an olive branch to say, come on to the table. Let's talk about what our plans are?
No, not at all. And in fact, what we find from Minister Clark's letter is that it's pretty much verbatim from what the development industry is talking about. So I think we can safely say that the development industry and the Ford government are walking in tandem, and they don't really have any need to try to negotiate with us. They expected a boundary expansion, not just for Hamilton, but for everywhere in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And they're not very happy that there's been some pushback. So they'll be using the strong arm.
My thought at this sort of point is, in every city in the 905, pretty much, and Toronto as well, if you exclude Toronto from the 905, development is, if you want to get something that gets people motivated, it's development for whatever reason. And that can sometimes be for bad reasons. Like, I don't like using the NIMBY word, but the NIMBY stuff, or it can be, but it gets people passionate. And what we have right now is a completely unbalanced system where the province basically holds all the power, and the municipalities, who are in theory meant to control the stuff, hold very little, or they can vote how they like, but they're likely to get overridden by the whatever the tribunal's called this week. I don't understand, given how huge this topic is, why the other provincial parties are not at the forefront of this argument too. Andrea Horwath is Hamilton Centre MPP. Why is she not stepping forward and saying, no, Hamilton, we will make sure that this doesn't happen if we're elected as the next provincial government? Why is Stephen Del Duca not doing the same?
She has, in fact.
Okay. So...
yeah, she has. So has Sandy
what precisely
Shaw.
Has she said?
Yeah, they have come out unequivocally saying that anything that happens with boundary expansions, if they're voted in, then they will be repealing all of that. And she, in fact, Andrea Horwath wrote a letter to Hamilton City Council right after Steve Clark did his thing. And that letter was not included in the agenda for that meeting. So we still haven't seen publicly that letter, although it's being circulated on social media. So both the Greens and the NDPs have come out very strongly against what's going on right now, and they have they've met with us early on. We've had many meetings with MPP Sandy Shaw. I've had a meeting with Andrea Horwath, and they've been very literally helpful both on the ground and with whatever they can offer us through online means.
Are they suggesting any kind of legislative changes in terms of the overall powers of the province with regard to municipalities, like actually letting municipalities be in control of their own destinies? Because that's another thing that I would really like to see kind of on the agenda for next year,
Yeah. Well, generally municipalities have been in charge of their own destinies, and we can vote for no boundary expansion. But what would possibly happen is an MZO would then show up, a minister's zoning order. So those minister zoning orders have always been an option of the province to use. But as we know, the Ford government has used them exponentially more than they have ever been used in the past. So if we were just to return back to our regular way of doing things and not have MZOs flying around, then I think everybody would agree that it's a pretty acceptable way to do business.
There's a thought that popped in my head as we were talking here, and there seems to be, excuse me, There seems to be a discrepancy between how the Ford government applies the rules in the 905. And by that, I mean, your organization is trying to stop this expansion. However, we don't seem to have this argument being made here in Burlington or really in Halton, where there's a predominantly conservative elected members. Milton, Oakville, North Burlington, and Burlington are all held by PC members. Yet, I mean, we don't have this fight over let's expand the boundary, let's expand north, let's expand into the Greenbelt. That doesn't really seem to be happening. We've got this.
It's happening in Milton, actually, but it's happening in Milton because they actually have some white fields. Yeah.
Okay, but I guess I'm thinking more locally here in Burlington. Like we're all about how do we argue over intensification? How do we build internally and put buildings here in the city? And there's talk of changing the urban the targeted growth centers from the downtown to the GO stations and all that. And that that's all well and good. Yet in Hamilton, we don't have that argument being made for the downtown. There's no urgency. Let's build up around, the proposed LRT line. Let's build up around the existing GO station, and that kind of infrastructure. That argument is not being made. It's we need to build out. What's your take on that kind of discrepancy? That what you want to see happen in Hamilton is what's technically the argument being made here in Burlington. Mm-hmm. And they're not willing to entertain your notion here in Hamilton.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. The Stop Sprawl movement has actually spread from Niagara. It includes Stop Sprawl Halton, Stop Sprawl Peel. There's Stop Sprawl generally Ontario. There are groups all through the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and as you mentioned, Roland, Milton is especially bad for this. There are thousands and thousands, much more than Hamilton, to be honest, of acres of farmland at risk. Now, sometimes people push back against the tall towers. But what we're really hoping for and what we want for Hamilton is not tall towers, not a sea of single family homes, but missing middle density. Everything from 3 to 5 stories to be built all through our neighborhoods. And admittedly, that's harder for the development industry to do because it costs more. It's much more affordable to pave over a green field and build houses than it is to do infill development. But that's what we're asking for. But there are, in fact, groups all across the Greater Golden Horseshoe who are fighting against urban plan amendments and sprawl plans. But what we're
the difference in Burlington
is
sorry. Go ahead.
Burlington, it happened a little sooner, I think.
Burlington doesn't have any white field, basically. It does have one field, literally one field that is white, and it's being built on. So,
that's
up is the only way.
Mississauga.
Up is the only way, but the missing middle. You're singing so much from my song sheet when you talk about that, because we have this, I think, crazy situation in Ontario where you have very small areas which are of urban growth centres, where basically the municipalities have no control over urban growth centres. It's whatever the developers ask for, they're going to basically get, because they'll end up at what was the LPAT.
Yes.
And then you have greenfield sites or whitefield sites. And the vast areas of single-family homes are untouchable because the cities do still control those, and the people who live on those streets really don't. They tend to get very defensive about having condos, but having apartments built. But that's exactly where we need it. It's where we need the granny flats, and we need the like you say, the 3 to 5 stories. I've just moved to a 3-story apartment, and it's great. I really like it. A, it's an really nice neighborhood. B, but it was built in the 1920s, because we haven't been building that kind of stuff for decades and decades.
It's illegal to build a lot of that now.
Yeah.
We can't even build you have to jump through hoops to get a duplex built, whereas Calgary, where
absolutely. No, you can't build duplexes because
That's not part of the zoning laws. And Calgary discovered not that long ago that it costs every resident of that city over $1,000 to sprawl. That's what the tax increase would be. So they put it out to the people, and surprisingly, they said, "Oh, let's stop sprawling." So they changed their zoning laws. This is what we need in Hamilton. We need inclusionary zoning that allows affordable homes to be built, affordable housing, and missing middle housing. And now, drive through any Calgary neighborhood, you'll see tiny little infill stuff all over the place. Single-family homes have been replaced with duplexes, semis, triplexes. Interesting and innovative things that fit very well in a neighborhood and certainly do not detract from the neighborhood streetscape. I have a massive monster home across the street from me with 3 humans living in it. It could easily be a duplex.
Yeah.
Why are we allowed to build monster homes, but we that can't have 2 front doors?
I have one final question for you, Nancy, and you touched upon again the kind of the growing movement of stop sprawl in the 905. You know, you mentioned Peel, Milton, Niagara, obviously Hamilton. Are you networking with these groups to kind of get a streamlined message to the province and to kind of help each other out? Because it sounds like you all have the same goal, and that is to reshape the existing land that each municipality is on to more density, more inclusionary development, and to stop further expansion into farmland. And I'm just wondering, you know, what are you guys networking, or is this are you like a small part of a larger organization? And I'm talking and I'm rambling now. So Nancy, please answer.
It's usually me.
We are networking, and it's all behind the scenes stuff. And we've all agreed to call ourselves Stop Sprawl something somewhere. And that's because that's what we came up with. Just yesterday, a few of us got together with some folks from Caledon to, network with something that was happening up there. So yes, we are absolutely coordinating. We're in touch all the time through social media and emails and sharing information. It just happens to be Hamilton is a little further along. And I'll just take this moment to say that, I don't know if you folks know this, but November 9th has been determined as the date which City Council will be asked by staff to vote on expansion or not. We were expecting it to be in the new year because we expected that all the staff reports, of which there are many, which are going to be produced at that GIC meeting on November 9th, will have time to be debated, discussed. There will be a lot of delegates. All of that should be happening on that day. And we are asking for time for all of that to unfold and for the vote to be happening later. But no, they're so far sticking to their guns, and the vote will happen at some point that day, probably closer to midnight. So what we're looking for now here in Hamilton is a deluge of letters to council, and we need delegators to either pre-record your delegation and send it as a Zoom recording, or to sign up to delegate live at City Hall, which a few of us have done. Last time we had a call out for this was March 29th, when the first boundary expansion question came, and we had 50 delegators and 200 letters. So we're hoping to double all of that, because this is the time when City Council needs to hear from the citizens, hearing from us rather than other groups in the city who have a different agenda. And you can do that through our website, stopsprawlhamontsho.ca.
Absolutely. We'll put the link into the show notes. Joe, I just want to say one final thing. And that anybody listening thinking of debating whether to send a letter or delegate in person, because councillors listen far more to delegations than they do to letters. It's just a simple fact of life. You can skip through letters. A delegation you have to listen to. But both are useful. But if you have the courage and the gumption to delegate, and it takes a bit of gumption, do it, because you get the attention, and no mistake. Anyway, sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say we're coming up on the 40-minute mark of this chat, and as we often say on this podcast, we could probably go on for hours talking about this, but we do have to wrap it up because our listeners probably have to get on with their day. So Nancy Hurst from Sprawl, HamONT. Thank you very much for coming on today and sharing your thoughts and your group's opinions with us. And this is probably a story that's not going to be going away anytime soon, so we'll try and stay on top of it and follow up with you at some point in the future.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to meet you.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.